Hey guys, and welcome back to another week of Dear Piggy's Java tutorials. So this week we're still going to be working with methods, but it should be easier for us since we already have a solid understanding of how to create methods and how to take in parameters. So the first thing that we're going to work on this week is method overloading. And basically what this is it's taking basically multiple methods that have the same name. So we can create all sorts of different methods that have the same name, but they take in different parameters, basically. So remember, last week we learned about how to create a method, and a method is basically a function. You define it once, and you can call it many times. So let's talk about why methods overloading is so powerful. Let's take a look at this picture that I have over here. We have static int plus method, and it takes in two integers as parameters. Now down here, we have static double plus method, and it takes in two double parameters. Remember, integers are whole numbers, doubles are like decimals, right? So over here, they're both called plus method, right? But when we run them in our main function, we can use the same name and we get two different results, one by assigning it to an int and one assigning it to a double. So why this is good, you might think that this is kind of tedious if we kind of create the same thing over and over and over, just changing the return type and changing the parameters. But this is actually going to save a lot of time and going to clear up some confusion when you're running your code. Because imagine if you created different functions for all of these. You would have plus method int, plus method double, plus method string, plus method floats. You would have all sorts of different methods with different names when you're basically just changing the return type, right? So instead of running your function, 10 million different functions of like plus method int, plus method double, you just create them by doing method overloading, and then you run them with the same name every single time. So basically, when we use method overloading, it makes running our functions in the main function a lot more understandable and concise. So let's go ahead and try a quick example, right? This topic should be relatively easy to understand. All we're doing is creating the same exact function with different return types. So let me log into Replit, create a new REPL Java create. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create our function. So let's start. Remember, we always create our functions in the main class, but outside of the main function. So we start with static because for now we're all working with static functions because we're running it in a static main function. So static and int, right? Remember, int is our return type, and let's do an easy one first. Let's start with add numbers. So add num, and then we take in two numbers, int x and int y. Then we say return x plus y. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? So all we have to do now is we do add num, we run it like this, then we give it two numbers. We would give it maybe 3 and 5, which should give us 8. Now let's run our code and let's see what it gives us, okay? And while we're waiting for Replit to run, let's do another example of static overloading. Oops, hold on guys, I forgot to do this. I'm supposed to do int answer1 is equal to this and then print it back out. Because whenever you use the return keyword, you have to set it to an integer and then print that integer back out. So my bad, let's run this again. So while we're waiting for that to run, let's try doing the same thing except using double. So static double, we're still going to call it add num. And look guys, over here, our first function worked. It gives us 8. Add num, but this time instead of taking int x and int y, let's take double x and double y. Then again, we're still going to return x plus y. And let me add a semicolon after this function here. Okay, perfect. So these two functions are exactly the same, except I replaced int with double, int, double, int, double. Now let's go ahead and try this again. Int answer2 is equal to add num, and then for double, let's do 2.45 1.78. and then system.out.println, println, answer 2. There we go. Now let's run our code. So click run, and we are going to get, oops, hold on, I have an error. It says possible lossy conversion from double to int. Oh, guys, this is a perfect example of what we should not be doing. Over here, my original intention was to add 2 doubles, right? So my answer obviously would also be a double. However, when I assigned answer 2, I assigned it to an integer. So that would be wrong, right? Because I have to make sure that since I'm running the add num with the double parameters, then I'm going to get a double answer returned to me. So let's try this again. That was a good example of where we might accidentally go wrong. And this time we get 4.23. So we know that now it's working right. Okay, so that was just a very, very simple example of method overloading. And all we did was create 2 of the exact same functions. And always, always, always remember, guys, that when you're taking in your answers and you're assigning it to a variable, make sure you're careful about what variable type you're assigning it to, right? So don't make the mistake that I did of using doubles but assigning it to an int variable. Okay, so this was a simple example. Now, I challenge you to think about this and create 2 methods, method overloading again, with your minimum and maximum function. So in our last video, we created a minimum maximum function by basically creating a minimum placeholder variable that had no value at first. Then we compared the 2 numbers, and if the first one was greater than the second one, we would assign the second one to be the minimum, else the first one would be the minimum. Things like that. Remember, that was our last video. Go ahead and watch it if you have no clue what I'm talking about. I want you to try this, except I want you to be able to take either integers or doubles. So go ahead and try to do method overloading with our minimum maximum functions and let me know what you think. Okay, so that's basically it for our method overloading function. Remember, method overloading is when you overload a function, right? You use one function that has the same name, but, multiple functions that have the same name, okay? And that's it for this video. In our next video, we will be working on recursion. So that is a big topic, and I'll see you then. Bye, guys.